Well, we are back here on PulumiVision here on 20th of January. I don't know why I'm saying when it is.
Well, technically, it's the 21st.
Oh, you're in the future, Ben.
I am in the future.
Is
And the
anything any
weather's pretty
better?
good today. Look, politically, no. The weather might be slightly nicer.
I hope so. It's here in Chicago. Let's see. Now I want to see what we're at right now. This morning it was really bad. We are, and I'll even convert it. Hang on. How do I? You would think that this would be easier to change really quickly.
You're right. Technology.
Yeah. Let's do temperature in Celsius. Okay. So it is currently here in Chicago, -9 Celsius.
Oof.
Feels like -15. So, but that is
Crikey.
still warmer than it was this morning when I woke up. Because this morning when I woke up, it feels like -10 Fahrenheit. So I was kind of like, my dog was like, when I went to go let her out, I was like, usually I sort of let her run in the yard and I was like, nope,
Yeah.
you're going on the leash in the yard because I am not going to chase you. I'm just taking you far enough to do your thing, So we
Fair enough.
are
Yes,
okay.
I remember
Hey,
the
hi,
days of-
Engine. Engine
Engine,
is
how you
joining us.
doing?
Yep. So, hey, Ben. So, do you see those chats?
I do see the chats coming
Okay,
through.
cool.
It's
So,
very good.
we
currently have around about 20 degrees here, which I think is about 70 Fahrenheit.
Oh,
So
okay.
very different.
Well, it's much better.
Much.
Yeah.
And I do remember the days of taking the dogs out for their morning business on a very cold day. Although, to be honest, we don't usually get negatives that often
Right.
over here.
But it's also like your summer.
But
so it's a whole
it
different,
is, yes.
It's a whole different hemisphere, right? So what we're gonna do today, Ben is joining me from Auth0, and I know very little about Auth0 except that I know a lot of people who work there or have worked there. So, cool. So Engine has done a lot with Auth0, and
that's brilliant.
It said we'll see how Ben does it. Well, what we're gonna kind of do. So actually, Engine.
In the same way as you know very little about Auth0, Matty, I know very little about Pulumi. So we're going to have a fun time here trying to hack the two together.
We will. And Engine, we will, as always, we'll take all comments from the peanut gallery to help us figure stuff out. And
please do. We might need your help.
Maybe we should just have Engine get on the stream.
It's probably a good idea.
So so what we thought we'd do though is and again, if you're very familiar with Pulumi and Auth0, some of this will be the beginning will be maybe a little repetitive, but it's going to be we're educating each other and you get to watch. So
and possibly even cringe a little bit.
Maybe. Let's hope. So I went so far as to create myself an Auth0 account, and that's pretty much where we're at. So I thought what would be cool is maybe I'll share my Auth0, my screen of what I had set up. We're going to start talking a little bit about what Auth0 does, or at least, and our goal here is we're kind of going to be using Pulumi to sort of manage our Auth0 setup, but we're going to do another stream in the future over on the Auth0 side. Which, by the way, Engine, where do y'all stream on YouTube? Where is this Auth0 stream in general? Is it on YouTube or on Twitch or?
Oh, you said Engine.
Oh, did I? Jesus. Well, as Engine knows, I'm used to just talking to him. Ben, yeah.
We do Twitch and YouTube.
Okay, cool. So we'll put some links later. We're going to do another episode over on the Auth0 side where we're going to actually use Pulumi and maybe the automation API to configure some applications to use Auth0. Would be kind of cool. But we're going to start by configuring some just Auth0 stuff in general. In order to do that, we kind of need to know what we can do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my Auth0 screen here, which, so yeah, you can see that we, have gone very far. You know what? I'm going to make this bigger too. Okay. I just made the StreamYard window bigger. That helped nobody.
Except
there we go. Okay, cool. So we've got, okay, cool. Look, I have 22 days left in my trial. Awesome, but we don't care about that. So what are some of the, so we got all these things. It's like walk me through this here.
Sure. All right. So just quickly for anybody who doesn't know, Auth0 is basically a software as a service identity platform. So you don't need to write your own logins and password resets and multi-factor authentication, all of those things. We've got a whole lot of SDKs so that you can create your front-end web applications or mobile apps. You can do machine-to-machine communications with JSON web tokens, that like access tokens and ID tokens, and we can dive into that a bit more if you like as well. And then you can also configure all of your APIs so that in the bigger grand scheme of things, say, for example, you've got a React app and you log in and you want to be able to talk from the React app to an API on behalf of your user, then the tokens you have need to know about all of the different things in this ecosystem. So the API and the single page app will be defined within the Auth0 system so that we can make sure that the tokens all do exactly what they're supposed to do and only what they're supposed to do to kind of convey this identity and access control to systems. So on the left-hand side, you'll notice there's an applications tab. Underneath that is an applications option. It is a little bit confusing, perhaps, to have applications under applications, but that's what it is at the moment.
And then another one in there. Really mean it.
It's definitely applications. And the reason for this is that technically, when you're looking at applications within the OpenID space, they would actually be called clients. But that naming can be a bit confusing as well, because client can mean anything, especially depending on what your business model is. So applications within the Auth0 context are the front-end apps and the mobile apps that you're creating. So you define those in here. And if you click on Create Application, we won't create one just yet, or maybe not even at all. But you can see there's the 4 different types there. So because the authentication flow, the way that authorization works with the Auth2, can't talk at this time in the morning, Auth2 login flows, there's various different ones depending on what kind of application you're writing, because the communication is different to keep it all secure. So you choose one of those there. Under applications APIs, you would define your APIs there. So if I had like a Node API or a .NET API that my front-end application was talking to, I would define that in that area. So this is basically the main area where you go in and configure exactly what your applications are so that Auth0 can give you the right login prompts and get you the access tokens and ID tokens that you need for them to all communicate with each other, if that makes sense.
Got it. Right. And then, like we said, so when we go to the next step, when we're going to build an application that's using Auth0, we'll go to that. Like for our purposes today, I think we're going to pretend that generic default application is our application, because we want to configure all the things inside of Auth0 that we can do from a management perspective. I think is kind of our focus. But
this is going to be interesting for me, because so often I just go in and I create a new tenant whenever I'm doing a new demo or whatever.
Yeah.
Or starting.
You don't actually have to manage a tenant over time. Yeah.
That's right. So when I think about what you do in Auth0, it's you create a tenant and then you work in the applications and the APIs area that we've just looked at. Whereas what Pulumi makes really interesting for me, and I have actually, when I say I know nothing about it, I did play with one of the quick starts just the other day, and I loved the fact that you could just spin up and destroy all the AWS stuff that you'd set up. Because one of the things that I find with AWS, and that might just be a me thing, is I often miss things that I've created, and then a month later I get a bill. I'm like, where was that?
It's not just you, Ben. It's everybody. And as someone said, there was a good tweet, and I don't have it offhand, but it was like, if you don't have a mysterious 23-cent bill every month from AWS, are you really an engineer?
Absolutely. Right? You know, I agree with that one wholeheartedly.
That one thing you can't find what it is. Yeah. That's why Corey Quinn is.
So what you're saying is that Pulumi is basically destroying engineers, because we're all going to be able to clean up our AWS artifacts really easily now.
Our goal is to put Corey Quinn out of business by being able to do that, and that's all revenge for Corey. When he made the gif of Billy the platypus beating up the Pulumi puss. So there we go.
Right.
So we're playing the long game, Corey. But yeah. Cool. Yeah. Okay, so we could create an app, but we're just going to use this default cat right now, right? Like,
well, look, we might even create an app.
Sure, why not? I can always grab the client ID and stuff. Yeah, let's do it. Cool. Why not?
Well, I was thinking maybe we do that through the what do you call it?
Pulumi?
The Pulumi has an Auth0
automation. Thingy. Yeah, the provider.
That's the word I was looking for. Tip of my tongue. Saving my.
Oh, and it's called.
So we could do that, right?
It's called a client there. It's not actually called an application. That's why I was confused. Cool. Yeah. Let's do that. Okay, I'm into it. All right.
So that's the interesting thing within the identity provider kind of naming thing. As I mentioned, client is the application because it's the client to the identity provider, which is where that naming can get confusing because a client can also often, a lot of web developers will think of a client as a browser. A lot of people think of client as the actual person that they're building the website for. So client is a very overloaded term, but it's specifically in the identity space, identity provisioning space. Client is a client to the identity provider. Therefore, that'll be the web application that you're logging into, or the mobile app, or the app.
Cool. Well, let's try it. Well, I mean, we will. We're gonna learn a little more about Auth0 first, but that's cool. Totally. We're not gonna clicky here, but okay. So we got ourselves. We're gonna make ourselves an application in a little bit.
Yep.
So what is, just at a high level, because we're gonna talk about tenants a little bit. So just
sure.
What's a tenant like?
So at the top left, you can see the dev TJ2MA600 thing. So that's your tenant name.
Yep. Okay.
You can actually go down there and create another tenant if you wanted. And then you can switch tenants. So essentially, when you create an Auth0 user account, you're actually just creating a space for multiple tenants. A default tenant is created for you when you sign up, because there's no point in having your Auth0 account without at least one tenant. Mm-hmm. And a tenant is basically a sandbox is possibly, I mean, it's the right word, but another overloaded term. It's basically a space where you can store all of your apps and your applications and your databases of users and your configuration and your branding and all of the things that you can do within the Auth0 dashboard. It's 99% of it is on a per tenant basis.
It's, so again, to use an overloaded word that means other things, it's sort of like an instance, right? It's a self-contained boundary of stuff, which is what tenancy usually means, but
totally
everybody knows that. So got it.
So in most cases, you might just only ever have one. You might create a second one if you wanted a testing and a production one. Although often I'll just use one even for the testing side of things, depending on how much you're doing within Auth0. Auth0 has things like actions where you can upload your own JavaScript, and we'll host that and run it as a cloud function on certain events, like after a user logs in, run this bit of code for me. I was doing one the other day where once a user logs in, I automatically create a Stripe customer ID for them, so that every user already has a Stripe customer ID within the system without my application even having been hit yet. So you can do a lot of things like that. Some people have used it for consent forms. After you log in, before you actually get back to the application, here's the terms and conditions you have to agree to before Auth0 will even issue a token. So there's also things you can do within Auth0 that you might then have a reason to have a development and a production environment, because you might want to make changes to things without production being affected. So there are a couple of reasons why you might have different tenants, but also you might have different tenants because you're a web developer and you've got 17 clients on the go, and each one of them is going to have their own tenant because they're going to be needing to log into the staging environment that you have. So a few different reasons you'd have multiple tenants. But essentially, as you say, it's just an instance of Auth0 that allows you to configure everything without affecting any of the other tenants.
Awesome. Cool. Okay. Maybe we can just start. So we've sort of poked around at a couple of things. So there's users. We might play with users. You can have users to. Obviously, we have one. I don't have any users.
Don't have any yet. So this is another interesting one. When you create an Auth0 account, that's your Auth0 user. These are your users for your application. So your tenant stores all of your users. If I went to your web app and I created an account, this is where I would end up. So this is a combined view of all of your users, but users can actually be from a number of different sources. So by default, when you integrate Auth0, you'll have a username and password, or an email address password field for both creating and logging in. And then I think sign in with Google is a default one.
Okay.
But if you jump over to Authentication Social, and then go over to the top right, create a connection. So here's the list of all the different social connections that we provide, and there's dozens. So you can do login with Twitter and Box and all these different things, and all you've got to do is enable. You might have to get an API key in the case of Twitter. I think you need to get your own developer API key and put that in there. We provide test API key, so you can enable it.
Okay, leave blank away. Use the Auth0. Got it.
Yeah. But obviously, when you go into production, you'd want to use your own. So yeah, if you enabled GitHub, for example, and I went to your application, I logged in with GitHub, then it's basically like a double auth flow. Your application is going to Auth0 with an OpenID Connect process. Auth0 then sends me on to GitHub. GitHub, I log in, sends the information back to Auth0. Auth0 will then store that in the user area. So you can see all of the people who've logged in, even with GitHub and Twitter and whatever other social connections you've got activated.
I see. I can just turn it on there. I'm just messing with things. I'm going to break
something. Yeah, go for it. Absolutely. It'll be fine. We can always kill your tenant and start a new one if we need to. But I don't think you're going to be able to break anything. Good luck.
No.
Actually, let me know if you do.
Right.
There might be a bounty out for that or something.
All right, cool. Should we flip over and write some Pulumi?
Let's do that.
Okay. So one thing, just so for context, we're going to be using the Pulumi Auth0 provider, which you can find in the Pulumi registry. We'll just take a quick look. We're not going to spend most of the time looking at the provider, but just a couple things to know, right? So we have the Auth0 provider. One of the things we need to set our credentials. And so I already sort of pre-did this just a little bit. I already found the stuff I needed. You can go chase this down. You need to know the Auth0 domain, which, as I learned because I'm a super expert in Auth0 from 10 minutes before the stream, is actually the name of the tenant, really what it boils down to. Yes and no, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
In this case, they match, right? And then the client ID, which is the name of the application ID, but it's called a client ID. And then there's a client secret, which I went and found. Now, one thing that I find interesting, so we decided, so you can also either store that environment variable or you can make it part of your Pulumi configuration, which I'll show you how to do that with one of them. And then the other ones I'm going to do off screen because they're secret. We actually, in our provider, we recommend that you have the client ID be encrypted, but it's actually presented in clear text in the Auth0 UI. But you also don't see it if you're not logged in, whereas your Pulumi configuration can be checked into GitHub. So it's still just prudent, probably, to make it be encrypted in that way.
So the interesting thing with the client ID is that it doesn't hurt to have it encrypted, for sure.
Yeah.
But it can actually be public. There's nothing secret about it. So if you're writing a single-page application, like React or Angular or whatever, then the client ID is already in clear text because it's within the application that gets sent to the browser. So the client secret, absolutely, that cannot be shared.
Yeah, that's a password. Yeah,
it's a password. It'll give you access to, and we're going to be looking at the management API in a minute, but it'll essentially give you access to management API. Actually, will it give you access? Maybe not the management API, but it'll certainly give you access to a lot of.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it will give you access to the management API because that's what we're about to do, and we're using the client secret.
Yes, but I think like indirectly. So I think what it allows you to do, and this is really testing my morning brain cells.
That's fair.
Is it'll allow you to create an access token that gives you access to the management API, which is probably what's happening in the background within the provider.
The provider might be okay. I see.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to find out. Let's see what happens.
Indeed.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to switch over out of the browser. Can I tell you how much I love Restream? Okay. So what I did already, just sort of in the background, because if this is new to you, I'm sorry to skip ahead a couple of little TV chef thing. Is I went already and I created a Pulumi program. Okay, and the Pulumi program is called Auth0 thing because I am clever. And
and naming is hard.
And naming is hard. Okay, and I elected. I'm just doing this one in TypeScript right now. If Pulumi is new to you or whatever, one of the great things with Pulumi is you can write your Pulumi program in TypeScript, JavaScript, Python, Go, any of the .NET languages. I just today I kind of rotate them around a little bit in this stream, and it seems like a TypeScript kind of day. So mostly to drive Engine crazy because he likes it when I write and Go. But it's okay. It's cool. So what I did to do this, though, just if you're curious, is I just ran Pulumi new TypeScript, right? And so what that did is it just generated the boilerplate of a TypeScript Pulumi program. So it created, installed the dependencies just for the Pulumi provider, or sorry, the Pulumi package. It created a completely useless beginning. So this index.ts, this is going to be our Pulumi program. It's just importing Pulumi. We're not doing anything. Plus, kind of got this. And then our Pulumi.yaml is just the overall configuration for the program, right? So it's just, and the only thing that really matters here is that it's just sort of saying it's the runtime. This is,
okay.
Node. So cool. That was easy. That was fun. But this won't really do anything right now. If we were to run this Pulumi program, it's literally not going to do anything except create a stack. And a stack is an instance of your Pulumi program. But it's not even worth creating a stack till we have something in it. So the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and just get that Auth0 provider installed. And since this is just, good old JavaScript, we can just npm install it, and it's just Pulumi Auth0. And this will let us now be able to use that program. So if we were to look at our package.json, we now see we have Auth0 available to us, which we can't do anything with unless we do import start as Auth0 from Pulumi/Auth0. Also, remember, Matty, when you were on stream, we turn off Copilot. Even though Copilot's kind of, well, actually, you know what? Forget it. Let's leave it on. Why not? What am I trying? I'm not teaching a class,
That's right.
Okay, cool. So all that really did is that kind of gets us now the ability to use Auth0. But if we want to do something with it, we need to do a little bit more. So we import stars Auth0 from Pulumi Auth0. And if we kind of, again, I have yet to figure out a way that I can easily share my Visual Studio Code and a browser in Restream. So anybody at Restream that's listening, can you fix that for me, please? Because the one good thing about Zoom is Zoom lets you share a portion of your screen. Like and if you didn't know this, if you go in when you do screen sharing in Zoom, go into advanced and it lets you draw. And the reason that's super helpful is if you have like a 49-inch ultra wide monitor like me, right? You don't want me sharing my whole monitor to share more than one window.
Totally.
So anyway,
this is probably going off topic, but I imagine we're going to be doing
this entire thing is off topic.
I know, right? What about using something like OBS and just capturing the screen in a virtual camera?
Because of Restream, because it's just easier because now I have to get you into the whole thing,
right?
So the way that you could do that,
oh no, I mean just use OBS to capture your desktop and then create a virtual output of it, and then still go through Ustream, not Restream.
Not
use OBS for actually streaming. Yeah.
There's a bunch of different ways that I could probably skin this cat too, when it comes to that. And really what I should start doing for my stream, because we have the Restream Studio to make it easy for anybody that wants to do the streams on our channel. But I can also, there's nothing preventing me from doing everything in OBS myself and still pumping it to Restream and it goes everywhere. And then I could use okay, so again, off topic, but I swear we will get right back to all this stuff. There's a lot of streaming stuff that I have eliminated because I run DevOps party games. And so OBS Ninja is awesome, but it doesn't work with 10 people, which normal people don't have to do. But when I run DevOps party games and we have 2 hosts and 8 players, you can't do that. But to be 100% honest, I could do this. I could do PulumiVision with OBS on my machine, use OBS Ninja to capture you, and we could do all of the things I want to do. So maybe I'll do that next week. By the way, speaking of next week, we have Quintessence Onks from PagerDuty will be on PulumiVision, same time, but different day. Yeah, and Engine is right. It actually Copilot works really well with Pulumi. When you're writing Pulumi code, you'll do pretty well with Copilot. So I think we said one of the first things we're going to do is we're just going to, say, screw it. Let's try to create a client, right?
Let's go for it.
Okay. So, bear with me for a second. I had to move some things around here. I'm going to move my terminal down. So we've gone ahead. We've imported that. And so we're going to create a new constant. So we're going to say const. We're going to call it my client. Have you ever noticed like how possessive we are about objects we create and stuff? And I blame Windows 95 because that's where my documents first came from.
Right.
So okay, here's a beautiful example. Copilot. Look at what just happened here.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So there we go. Okay, so it's a new Auth0 client, and we're going to call it my client because we, and let's see, we're just going to close that so I don't forget to close that later.
It's funny because I was just trying to work out when you said we're possessive, and I thought, why don't I call my things my something? I'm not a Windows user. Maybe that must be it.
So I'm looking at the now this is a point where good old Copilot is getting too smart for its own good, because that is not a property of the that's an output of it, is the client ID, but I don't get to set a client ID, but that's okay. Just ignore it. So one of the things when I'm looking at the API, we're creating a client, which is also referred to as an application because words are hard. So one of the things it lets me do is it lets me configure add-ons. It says you can configure add-ons to allow your application to call another application like Firebase or AWS on behalf of an authenticated user. We're not going to do that though, right here.
Right. Yeah.
So like I'm sort of looking through the example. So there is so I'm looking to see what are the required properties, and there's not really many that are. In fact, it looks like almost all of them. Like we could run this right now and it would just create a client with like nothing.
You might need to provide an app.
Let me tell you, an app type as well.
Maybe an app type. It says non-interactive, and
I wonder why it's
not.
What
that means to me.
Yeah, I wonder if that's the default. If there may be a default.
There might be. So when we clicked on create and you got the option of those four, the native single page app, traditional, I think it was called, and then a service to service or machine to machine. So it would need to know which one of those to create. But you're right, there might be a default.
The reason I
would like to think there isn't.
Yeah, well, the only reason I suspect that is under the resource properties, which are that we would be adding to it, like one of which is, and we will set app type. So let's just so we can see this. So there is one called app type. Now you see we're getting this type ahead. This is the beauty of we're using a general purpose type programming language. There's no it just gets this from the package. So, okay, app type. Now Copilot is being helpful, but I think our choice is, here's what the options are. So there's native, SPA, regular web. I'm wondering so the default one is generic. Is that not what? Generic. But I don't see that. I see native, SPA, regular web, non-interactive, RMS, Box, CloudBees, Concur. I wonder if there's just a whole shitload of them.
I'm familiar with the first four, and I'm going to set myself a to-do and work out what the others are.
It says options include. So I wonder if
the native, SPA, regular web, and non-interactive are going to be the four options we saw when that came up. So non-interactive is going to be machine to machine.
So what would be a good one to pick?
So if we're going to be creating an actual web application or an application of some sort, that's not machine to machine, like a server to server communication.
Yep.
Any of the first three. So SPA, obviously, you'd use force. I use the word obviously a lot. I'm retraining myself. SPA,
Me
single page
too.
app.
Me too. I'm trying so hard.
That's right. That'd be something like React or Angular or anything that's a single page app. If you're writing a .NET web app or PHP or Python or any of those things, that'd be a regular web app.
Okay.
And then if you're doing Electron or trying to remember the name of the Android programming language now. Anyway, if you're doing iOS or Android development, or native can also include desktop applications, then you would go with native.
So should we do regular web? Does it matter?
Let's go. We're not actually going to be writing.
Yeah, we're not doing anything. We just want to see it get created.
But yeah, choose one of the first three.
Okay, we'll just do native. Why not? Okay, cool. However, that needs to be a string because I swear to God, I can write TypeScript. Okay, so a couple other things we can do. So I'm just sort of going through. So there's allowed clients, right? So allowed clients, I assume, means like where someone can come from. Actually, let's find out. It's going to tell us.
So list of application IDs that will be allowed to make a delegation request. By default, all applications will be allowed.
And the example is allow.example.com.
Right. Yeah. So I think we can probably just leave that as.
Oh, I think we can leave it as nothing. I don't think we have to set it. I'm just sort of trying to go through some of our. Totally. I just want to set something. I guess there's well, actually, just even the app type is probably good enough. Just to we set something. Let's just make it happen, right? I mean, we can always add things. Maybe we can find a thing and we can change it next to see how things change. So okay, so theoretically, I like to say theoretically a lot when I'm about to run some code.
It's a good caveat. It's a good
actually, theoretically, let's do a fun thing just out of curiosity. Found an issue bug with creating HTTP authorizer in AWS with Pulumi. Stephen, is that in regards to with you're saying an HTTP authorizer? Is that an Auth0 thing, or is that just a general Pulumi bug you found that you want to talk about? That's Stephen in the chat. While we're waiting for that, does anybody know why this is not going to work? You may or may not know.
Apparently, you do need to give it a name. Just looking at the.
We did give it a name. That's this.
Oh, that's in there. Okay.
Oh well. Wait a minute. Yeah, that's the unique name of the resource within that. Pulumi bug. Okay, Stephen, we'll follow up on that in a minute.
Yeah, okay. The function signature.
Yeah, I'm using Auth0 and I like it, but I'm pretty sure it's a Pulumi thing. Cool. Stephen, will definitely follow up with you and find out what you found there. We have not actually set the our credentials, right? So what we need to do is we need to do a Pulumi config, and I need to do my configuration. So for this, the first one I'm going to do, I will actually, let me see if this is going to work the way I want it to. I just did the thing I didn't want to do.
That's the one you weren't going to do. And...
Oh, geez, I just ruined everything. It's fine. Okay, hang on. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. I'm just going to do this. What I was trying to do was tear that tab off, but that's not what it wants to do.
No.
Okay, it's totally fine. Again, we're going to... Okay, so what I need to do is I need to set the configuration, which you haven't done. So that went and it created the pulumi.dev.yaml, which is our default first stack. And you can see it has now set the Auth0 domain. Now, remember, I also need to set the client ID and the client secret. So I'm gonna hide again for a second so I can do those without again, watch the replay. You can see them, but whatever.
Well, you can see the first 20 characters, which is
that's true. That's true. It did kind of go off the side. Yeah. But the other good fact is, like, even if you did manage to do this, I'm gonna probably delete this entire tenant as soon as we're done with the with the stream. Okay, so we did that. So now the fun thing is if you take a look, if we go back to our Pulumi dev.yaml, you see how the client ID, so the domain stayed the same as it was, but the client ID, those say secret. So these are encrypted. So even when they get pushed up to Pulumi SaaS and everything like that, these are all encrypted. And even if you were to refer to these, they will never show like in Pulumi output because they're known as secret. So
sure. And you would be comfortable. Is it standard practice to put that file into your source control versioning
your
system?
yes, yeah, absolutely. And because it's your configuration. So a stack, like in this case, dev, usually it doesn't always, but it oftentimes can refer like to an environment. So it's what are the, I like to think about it. Your Pulumi program is saying what is the shape of the dial. Your stack config is what is the dial set to. Perhaps, can be that way. It doesn't always have to be that way, but yeah. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do a Pulumi up. And so this is going to say I'm going to run my Pulumi program, but what it's really going to do is it actually didn't even do that. It says I'm going to do a preview. I'm going to say if you were to run, I'm going to make sure your program will run, Matty. And what if you were to run it, what would it do? It says, okay, it has to actually create the stack. The stack hasn't been created. And it's going to create a client called my client, right? And then I can always say the detail, and the detail is going to get really specific about what's going to happen, right? So you're going to see inside Auth0, it says, okay, it's creating the app type native. And so now this is this is important. So you'll see that the client, even though we named it my client, because Pulumi does this auto naming thing, and this is to prevent namespace collisions.
Right.
We can override this if we wanted to. We're not going to worry about that right now. We don't care. In the case of something like this, you actually probably would because the name is descriptive. But when you're creating things like VPCs and resources and networks and stuff like that, but we're okay for right now. So we're going to go ahead and run this, and error update failed. You need to create a client. Okay, cannot fetch token. Client is not authorized to access.
We haven't.
So I need to create a client.
We haven't put any of that code in the index TS, have we? To actually use these credentials.
We shouldn't have to.
That's pretty cool.
So, but what I'm wondering, I'm going to check something here. No, okay.
So the client's not authorized to access.
So it could be that I have not done. Maybe I need to create a client grant in general for the client that we're using, because we're using default app basically, right?
What you need is, because at the moment we're talking to the management API. So what you actually need is credentials to be able to talk to the management API. So if you jump back into the Auth0 dashboard, this should technically be fairly easy.
Hang on. I think. Oops.
And whereas you say theoretically, I say technically. This should technically be fairly easy.
Okay, so all right, so we're in here, which makes sense because what I grabbed the client ID and the client secret from was just that client. It's not a client. Yeah, so
correct.
Okay,
so this is where and we'll have a look at both.
Okay. Engine says he created a machine-to-machine application type. For use of this. So we need to create an application for the purpose of using Pulumi. Okay. Is that what you were going to do?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So create application, this thing, right?
Do you want to share your screen again?
Am I not? No. I picked the right thing. I picked the thing I was sharing. I just didn't actually share it.
I'm not too bad at driving blind, but
yeah, no. It's like I because I have to add it to the screen.
Yeah,
you know
that's right.
I mean? Like, yeah. Okay, so machine-to-machine application, right?
Yeah. So there you go. So this will now show you a list of all the APIs that are defined in.
I want
Auth0.
Everything, man. Just give it to
me.
Look at me. This is Schmod 777 going on right now.
I love it.
Yes, they do need some more love. And the good news, Engine, that is every time I do these streams with a partner or with a provider, I put a little to do in my Asana board that now that I know a little more about it, I can go back and I can
flesh it out a bit.
Can update some of this stuff and create some guides. Okay. All right. So we're just giving them everything. It doesn't matter because this is not good practice, but
do not do this in production.
Yes, YOLO ops. Yes.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so now
you'll need to use the client ID and the client secret from this
here.
app, which you'll be able to grab from the settings
which I
tab.
can do. Okay, so first I can just do the client ID, which again we decided we don't care. So I can do. I'm just gonna.
So that's something we spoke about before we started the stream as well. Is that the documentation says to encrypt the client ID, which, as I said, there's nothing wrong with doing that. But it doesn't need to be encrypted. The only one that you really want to not share is the client secret.
And where will I? Oh, I can copy the client secret without showing it, right? I'm sure I'll be able to. Yep. Okay, cool. Perfect.
Yep.
So I can grab this and I can do my thing back here. So that was something that at the very minimum, I feel like what we just had to do here should definitely, and to Engine's point, should at least be added to the README of the provider that because it doesn't really, get us there. So that's a good thing to remember. Okay, so now I've done that. Cool. Let's switch back to, let's clear our screen first, Matty. There we go. Okay. So if you're an eagle eye, you'll see that this hash has changed. No, you won't, because I'm not sharing my screen. There you go. So these have been updated, but whatever, it's fine. So now let's do our, geez. Do not let me forget to just whack this whole tenant because if you watch the replay, it's all in my history. God, I'm so bad at this. Okay, so now, but this is fun. It doesn't have to create the stack because that happened, right?
Oh, yeah, cool.
So, but it's like now we have to create the client. So, okay, cool. Let's see what's up. Look at that.
Yay.
Okay, and again, I apologize that it's so kludgy that I have to go back and forth this way, but okay. So if we go back to Auth0 now and we go back to our applications, we see my client.
There it is.
It's a native app. It's a native app, and it's managed by Pulumi. Cool. That's very exciting. It can have a logo. So that got us so we created ourselves a client. That's a thing we can do. Yep. So a couple of things. There is a way to do a client grant, although you still would end up having to eventually, you have to start with having the rights to do this stuff. But I do see we have a resource for client grants.
Let's do a little deviation.
Yeah.
And if you go down to the third icon from the bottom, which will have the on the left-hand side in the navigation. So the marketplace.
Third icon. Oh, from the bottom.
Yeah.
Okay.
And just whack Pulumi into the search box. So this is a way for various vendors to provide code that will automatically provision things or do things within the Auth0 ecosystem. And I would just had a quick jump in at my end to have a look at this, and I'm wondering whether when you add integration here, this might actually automatically create the machine-to-machine client.
No, you know what it did when I said add integration? Watch what happens. You watching carefully?
Takes you to the installation tab.
Woo-hoo! Yep.
Can be
done. And setup and configured takes you to this. So we absolutely need to fix this page.
I can't see that page.
I am sorry. It's the same one. It's the one. It's a different page that's the same content that we were looking at.
Right.
So yeah.
Okay.
But that's good to the full API documentation. Yeah. So this is all the right now because there's no way to there. Yeah. There's not an automatic integration.
Technically, it's possible within the marketplace to have the installation or the installation process do all of the stuff in the background to create the the client that has machine to machine, and to give you those credentials to you somehow. I'm not sure what that workflow would look like. But yeah, the manual creation of that. So that's something we can probably talk about offline.
Like, yeah, I think so.
Connect your people with my people, and we'll sort something out.
And and all those people will go, why don't you all just do it? Right.
That's right. Probably.
Cool.
And I'll say, well,
yeah. All right, we got a little bit more time. Let's find something else fun we can do here. So, all right, so a user now this is where I'm finding things interesting. So user ID. Okay, so because let's make a user into our system here. So I'm going to switch. I'm going to do it this way because I'm just getting so tired of. Okay, so just so we kind of have a feel. So it says with the user resource, we can manage user identities, et cetera, et cetera. So let's go ahead. We'll add a user, and then we can give that user. Well, let's figure out what we can do with it, right?
Sure.
So fair enough.
Back in again, then.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to do here.
Okay.
So let's.
I wasn't sure whether it was just hiding.
I thought no, it's a little bit of both. A little bit of both.
Fair.
Okay, cool.
You're doing well, to be honest. I do really badly at talking and typing and sorting stuff at the same time.
All right, so let's see. So if I'm going to look at the user resource, okay, so we have our client. Let me just move this over so I can see everything I'm trying to do at once. Okay, so let's go ahead now. I'm going to move this out of the way, and we're going to create. So, so one of the things, so we're going to create a role just for funsies. Sure. Because I want to show how we can pass things around with each other programmatically.
Yeah.
But before I do that, so I want to look at what we can do with roles. So there's so a role resource has a description and a name. I guess it doesn't really. Oh, permission. Name of the permission. Here, well, let's just see what happens here when I try to do this. Okay, so I'm going to say we're going to call this const. And instead of user, we're going to refer to this. We don't want to call it admin, so we're going to say it regular. Okay, and this is a new Auth0. But regular is not a... oh, I guess that's just what it's called. Okay, well, let's see what happens. And then...
Do you want that to be a role?
Yes. Description is a regular user. What did I do wrong here?
You got new Auth0.user.
Oh, thanks.
So it's just assuming everything's a user.
Yep. Okay. There we go. Okay, so this is going to create a role just called regular. Okay. Yeah. And we don't, just giving a role doesn't inherently give it any special rights or anything. That lets us then give it rights later. So cool. Yes. Okay. So now we're going to create a user. Right, and we're going to do a new Auth0. Oh, no, see, Copilot, go to hell. Okay, user. Okay, but this time we're not going to let it be quite so crazy. There we go. Okay, yeah, just go away. User, new Auth0 user connection. What did...
So it'll take roles.
Oh, because we don't have any user. We don't have any args in there yet. That's fine. It's fine. Okay, so we'd say connection name. Okay, and then that's user password authentication.
Yes.
What's that?
I was going to say use the autocomplete.
Yes.
I hate typing that long string out.
So user ID we can set. I don't know if we need to.
User ID would be automatically created. I don't think I would set that.
That seems unlikely. Yeah. Okay. But we can do a user name.
It is interesting that the documentation shows that you can provide it.
Now, is the username... okay, username is like... Okay. And then... So given name is Michael. Family name is Bluth. I don't know what what nickname means.
So nickname is just
like an alias,
a friendly name, or an alias of the user.
Oh, okay. So we don't really need that.
You don't need it. What Auth0 will do when you log in using an email address and password is it'll take the part before the @ and use that as your nickname. And it just means that when you get the ID token at the end of the day, then you've got things like the email address and various other things, but you've also got a nickname, so you can just say hi Ben instead of hi Ben at Dechrai.com.
So email verified means...
That means that when I've created my account, I've gone to my email and clicked on the link that says this is my email address.
So I can set that. So that's sort of skipping. If I set that to true, it skips a verification process.
Yes.
Wow, I just sounded Canadian or Australian there. So we're going to do that. Actually, no, like I don't want to actually log in as him. So I don't want to verify it because I don't want y'all to know how to log into this thing unless you have access to that. So we're going to just call it who, her. Okay, and then now this is where it'll get fun. So then we can say roles and it's regular ID, right? So, this is where
lovely.
So we could get the ID again. I'm pointing at my screen. So when we created that role, so this is going to create. We could log in as Michael Bluth at mattstratton.com with that password, except we won't be able to be unless I verify my email. But I presume that I will get a verification email when this happens. When we create it. Let's find out.
Let's find out.
Do celebrities know things? Let's find out. All right. Okay, so let's do Pulumi up. And sorry, I haven't been... Some clients reject unapproved user. Okay. All right, cool. So again, if we go into our details, we can see it's going to create that and see. So the name, but that's okay. Oh, because we called it user, but that's fine. That's just sort of the object. Cool. Go ahead and run.
To see what that looks like when we see it in the dashboard.
Yep. Cannot say username for connection without requires username.
So usernames are generally not asked for when you're logging in, and I was wondering how this would work as well. You can, in Auth0 in the dashboard, or probably through the Pulumi provider, you can require a username, which is an option you can configure for the username password connection, whatever it's called, username password authentication connection type.
Oh, it says that the username is only valid if the connection requires a username, which you're saying...
by default, the connection doesn't.
Okay, so we should delete that.
Yeah.
So the username of this quote username, the login would be the email address.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. So many things in my documentation I need to... Again, I'm taking ownership of it. It's cool. Okay. And cool. Nice. So now let's go over to our pal Auth0. And let's see. That should be under users.
And there should be a role in there as well.
Yep.
There you go.
Okay, so there is our pal Michael Bluth and latest login. Okay, email is pending. I'm gonna take a quick look on my phone because we're curious. No, not yet, at least. Or if it was going
to take a second.
Yeah. Oh, MFA is enabled for this user. Is that just by default? Or is that...
yeah, so it means that you can use MFA.
Oh, it's enabled. It's not required. Oh, send an enrollment.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not disallowed. Okay.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll keep watching to see if... So now... Let's do sort of along a similar lines. We talked a minute ago, and by a minute ago, I mean 54 minutes ago, about how, Ben was saying it's great because you can, delete all of your, what do you call it? AWS resources and stuff.
Right.
Well, same thing here. So if I were to run Pulumi Destroy right now, it should remove from Auth0 this client, this role, and this user, which is totally fine. I am.
Give it a try.
You probably aren't going to want to do this all the time.
Oh, before you do that, should we test the client and make sure that the username and password, the email address and password you provided, actually allows you to log in?
Yeah, but don't I need to? I need to set it to pretend that the email was verified.
No, you can actually log in without the email being verified. It just means that when you get the ID token into your application, one of the values in that JSON Web Token is going to be email verified as false. So you can then choose as the application.
Do I have to give this Michael Bluth does not have any access to any applications yet, though, right?
He should have access to, well, he'll have access to any of the applications in the system. So logging in is one thing, and then the question is what APIs might he have access to?
Got it. Okay, so how do I try this?
So
should I switch over to a browser?
Yeah, just head back to the Auth0 dashboard. And we can try it from the authentication connections area.
Authentication, no.
Database.
Okay. Oh, right, got it.
And then hit the 3 dots on the right and go to try.
Okay.
So and this was log in with those details.
Michael Bluth. Oh, no. Michael Bluth at Stratton.com. And that was who? Egg. Continue. All right.
Yay, it works. So you can see in there that's the information that'll get sent through as part of the identity token to your application when you log in. So even though you didn't provide a nickname, it's taken the nickname from your email address.
Makes sense. Fair.
One thing it's not showing that will come through in the ID token is that email verified Boolean.
Got it. Now check this out just for one other thing that we can do. So let me find it. There it is. So this is all in the Pulumi SaaS. We weren't really looking at this, but we can kind of see all the things that we were, so if we look in our dev stack, we have all the activity. So all those pieces we were running, we're able to see, and we can actually even see those same outputs that were happening, right? So if we look at the timeline, we can see what it did. We can see what changed, the configuration. And again, we can't see these because they're encrypted. These are the resources that are under management currently, right? So what we'll see is when we go back and then we do Pulumi Destroy, actually the history won't be gone. It's it'll destroy if I the Pulumi Destroy, I'll still have my stack and all that, but then when I remove the actual stack. So we're going to go ahead and swap back over real quick to, let's just go clean up after ourselves because there is no equivalent of Corey Quinn for Auth0. And if we do Pulumi Destroy, going to sit there and say, okay, this is all the things I'm going to get rid of. And now you'll notice this view live. So that link would take you to that.
Okay.
That thing that we were just looking at, right? Okay, cool. Yes, we wanted to perform the destroy. Boom, 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 boom. It's totally done. And again, it says the stack is still there. So if I were to go back over to my auth thing dev, I can still see, but it would then show, like, we'll just do this because why should you believe me?
Citation required.
Yeah, citation required. Now it sees these resources is none. And again, activity, we did a destroy. That was fine. But what I can do is then I can go and delete the whole stack, like to clean up, which is something you don't necessarily do a lot. I will do it because I don't ever need to do this again. This is not an ongoing thing. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing some stuff. So I think what we were talking about doing in our follow-up on this is using the Pulumi automation API and maybe having a web app that can then itself configure itself for Auth0.
Sounds very Inception-like.
It is a little bit. It's kind of turtles all the way down. Don't forget to tune in. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe. If you're with us on Twitch, smash that follow button, and then you'll be notified when we've got upcoming streams. But we do PulumiVision every Thursday at this same time, so starting about an hour earlier than it is right at this moment. And yeah, next week we'll have Quintessence from PagerDuty. We're going to be talking a little bit about some cool stuff we can do with PD and Pulumi. And those of you who don't know, I spent a few years working to PagerDuty, so we should have a good time. Ben, thank you for getting up early.
You're welcome. It's been fun. And for those who want to join us for the next stream that you and I are going to be doing, I assume you'll be sending that out via your Twitter streams.
We will, but anyway. Let's just
so Twitch and YouTube channel names are both Auth0. So twitch.tv/Auth0 and youtube.com/Auth0.
Okay, go ahead and why don't you go subscribe to those? I just put those links in the chat.
We don't stream quite as regularly as you do, but we do have a couple of interesting things coming out every now and then.
Awesome. I'm excited.
Hopefully they're interesting anyway. I assume they are.
At least you have a couple of things. That is definitely.
Things is what we have.
Things is what we have. All right. And until next time, we will see you all